December 7, 1941. Pearl Harbor burns. Amid the wreckage, one fact becomes brutally clear to Japanese Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto. He has awakened a sleeping giant. But even Yamamoto, architect of the attack, cannot imagine the industrial tsunami about to break across the Pacific. Within 4 years, America will launch more aircraft carriers than Japan builds in her entire history. The ratio isn't close. It's staggering. This is the story of two nations locked in an industrial deathmatch, where the battlefield isn't Midway or Guadalcanal, it's the shipyard. Where victory depends not on samurai spirit or tactical brilliance, but on assembly lines, prefabrication techniques, and the unglamorous mathematics of steel production. This is how America built the impossible fleet that overwhelmed the Japanese Empire, not through superior courage or warrior tradition, but through something the Japanese admirals called inconceivable, sheer industrial capacity operating at a scale never before witnessed in human history. The numbers tell a stark story. Japan needed 3 to 4 years to complete a single fleet carrier. America would eventually launch Essex-class carriers in 18 months. By 1945, American shipyards delivered one new carrier every month. Japanese admirals reviewing these intelligence reports assumed the figures were propaganda. No nation could possibly construct warships at such speed. They were wrong. The gap between American and Japanese shipbuilding wasn't just wide. It was unbridgeable. The challenge facing both nations in 1941 seems identical on paper. Build aircraft carriers fast enough to control the Pacific. But beneath this simple equation lurks a profound asymmetry. America possesses the world's largest steel industry, producing 60 million tons annually. Japan manages just 7 million. America has vast petroleum reserves and controls access to scrap metal markets. Japan imports 80% of her oil and 90% of her steel. The Imperial Japanese Navy understands these disparities. Admiral Yamamoto tells his superiors bluntly, "I can run wild for 6 months, perhaps a year. After that, I have no expectation of success." He's not being pessimistic. He's being mathematical. Japan's entire shipbuilding strategy rests on a gamble. Win decisively before America's industrial machine reaches full production. Destroy the American carrier fleet at Pearl Harbor, seize the resource-rich territories of Southeast Asia, force a negotiated peace before the American economy fully mobilizes. The plan nearly works. Pearl Harbor devastates the Pacific Fleet's battleship force. But 4 American carriers escape. They're at sea during the attack. These 4 carriers, Enterprise, Lexington, Saratoga, and Yorktown, become the nucleus of American naval resistance. They must hold the line while America builds reinforcements. The question haunting Washington: how long will reinforcements take? Japanese carrier doctrine emphasizes quality over quantity. Ships like Shokaku and Zuikaku represent the pinnacle of naval engineering. Fast, heavily armored, capable of operating large air groups. Construction begins in 1937. Shokaku launches in June 1939. Zuikaku follows in November. Both enter service in September 1941. 4 years from keel laying to commissioning. This timeline doesn't trouble Japanese planners. They expect war to be decided by spring 1942. 4-year construction cycles are acceptable when you only need enough carriers to win the decisive battle. American carrier construction follows different assumptions. The Essex-class design emerges from lessons learned in the 1930s, refined by observations of European naval warfare. The Navy wants carriers that balance protection, speed, and aircraft capacity. But equally important, they want carriers they can build quickly. Not in 4 years. In 18 months. The Essex-class design incorporates standardization principles borrowed from automobile manufacturing. Components are interchangeable. Sections are prefabricated off-site. The hull design allows multiple shipyards to build simultaneously without specialized facilities. Naval architects eliminate unnecessary complexity. Every design choice asks, can this be built faster? Captain Arthur Radford, working with naval constructors, pushes for radical simplification. Remove elaborate armor schemes that require precision welding. Standardize compartment dimensions so sections can be fabricated at different facilities and assembled at the shipyard. Design electrical and piping systems that can be installed by semi-skilled workers rather than master craftsmen. The Essex-class won't be the most elegant carrier ever built, but it will be the fastest to construct. Henry Kaiser enters the picture in 1941. A builder, not a shipwright, Kaiser made his fortune constructing dams and highways. He knows nothing about naval architecture, but he understands mass production. He understands that building ships is fundamentally no different from building anything else. Break complex tasks into simple, repeatable steps. Train workers to perform these steps efficiently. Eliminate bottlenecks ruthlessly. Kaiser's Liberty Ship program demonstrates his philosophy. Traditional shipyards build a cargo vessel in 230 days. Kaiser's Richmond shipyard reduces this to 42 days through assembly line techniques. On November 12, 1942, his yard completes the SS Robert E. Peary in 4 days and 15 hours. Keel laying to launch. It's a publicity stunt, but it proves the concept. Mass production works for ships. The Navy initially resists Kaiser's involvement in carrier construction. Carriers are complex warships, not cargo haulers. But as losses mount in 1942, resistance evaporates. Kaiser receives contracts for Casablanca-class escort carriers. These aren't fleet carriers. They're smaller, slower, built on merchant ship hulls. But Kaiser's yards deliver them in 3 months. The Navy's skepticism transforms into enthusiasm. Spring 1942. The Battle of Coral Sea costs America the carrier Lexington. 1 month later, Midway claims Yorktown. By summer, American carrier strength in the Pacific drops to 3 ships: Enterprise, Saratoga, and Hornet. Then Wasp sinks in September. Hornet follows in October. By November 1942, America operates exactly 1 carrier in the Pacific, Enterprise. The ship's crew grimly jokes, Enterprise versus Japan. Japanese losses hurt worse because they're irreplaceable. Midway sinks 4 fleet carriers: Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu. Japan possesses no rapid replacement capability. The carriers under construction, Taiho, Onryu, and her sisters, won't commission until late 1943 at the earliest. Japan must fight through 1942 and 1943 with the carriers she has, while American shipyards race to build reinforcements. The race becomes existential for both nations. Japan struggles to maintain parity. America fights to survive until her industrial power matures. Everything depends on which happens first, Japanese victory or American production. American shipyards operate 24 hours daily. Shifts overlap. Welders work under floodlights, sparks cascading into the darkness. Women enter the workforce by the millions. Rosie the Riveter becomes reality. The workforce at Newport News Shipbuilding swells from 17,000 to 31,000 workers. Brooklyn Navy Yard employs 75,000. The scale is unprecedented. But workforce expansion alone doesn't explain American success. The secret lies in prefabrication and modular construction. Traditional shipbuilding assembles a vessel from the keel up, 1 piece at a time. Workers install each frame, plate, and rivet sequentially. It's craftwork, skilled, slow, impossible to accelerate significantly. American yards abandon this approach. Instead, they construct entire ship sections, bow assemblies, stern sections, center hull modules, at separate facilities. Each section arrives at the shipyard nearly complete, with wiring, piping, and compartments already installed. The shipyard merely lifts these massive sections into position and welds them together. Imagine building a model from pre-made components rather than individual parts. The assembly time collapses. Essex-class carriers embody this philosophy. Newport News Shipbuilding fabricates bow sections at one facility while constructing the hangar deck at another. The sections converge at the slipway for final assembly. What traditionally required 3 years compresses into 18 months. The first Essex-class carrier, USS Essex herself, begins construction in April 1941. She launches in July 1942. She commissions December 31, 1942. 20 months, start to finish. But one carrier every 18 months isn't enough. America needs more. The Navy orders 24 Essex-class carriers. Multiple shipyards receive contracts: Newport News, Bethlehem Steel, Philadelphia Navy Yard, Norfolk Navy Yard, Brooklyn Navy Yard. Each yard employs prefabrication. Each yard refines the process. Each subsequent carrier takes slightly less time. The escorts multiply faster. Kaiser's Casablanca-class escort carriers roll off production lines like automobiles. His Vancouver shipyard delivers 50 escort carriers between April 1943 and July 1944, one every 9 days. They're not fleet carriers, smaller, slower, less capable. But they provide air cover for convoys, support amphibious operations, hunt submarines. They free fleet carriers for offensive operations. Japanese yards cannot match this pace, partially because Japan lacks America's industrial base, fewer steelworks, limited petroleum, restricted access to raw materials. But also because Japanese naval construction philosophy doesn't prioritize speed. Japanese carriers feature elaborate armor protection, complex anti-aircraft systems, sophisticated damage control arrangements. These features enhance survivability. They also lengthen construction time. Taiho, Japan's most advanced carrier, incorporates armored flight deck, enclosed hurricane bow, advanced radar systems. She's a magnificent ship, arguably the finest carrier of her era. But magnificent requires time. Keel laid July 1941. Launched April 1943. Commissioned March 1944. Nearly 3 years. In that same span, American yards complete 12 Essex-class carriers and over 30 escort carriers. The mathematics become brutal. Each month, America's carrier strength grows while Japan stagnates or declines. By January 1943, America operates 5 fleet carriers in the Pacific. By January 1944, the number reaches 9. By January 1945, America deploys 28 fleet carriers. Japan begins the war with 10 fleet carriers. By 1945, she operates 4, and those 4 are desperately short of aircraft, fuel, and trained pilots. Japan's shipbuilding industry faces problems beyond construction speed. American submarines strangle supply lines. Steel shipments from mainland Asia dwindle. Petroleum imports cease almost entirely. Shipyards lack materials to begin new construction. Partially completed hulls rust at the slipways, abandoned when resources vanish. The Americans implement strategic bombing campaigns targeting Japanese industry. B-29 raids pulverize steel mills, engine factories, and shipyards. Even when materials are available, facilities to use them are destroyed. The carrier Shinano, converted from a Yamato-class battleship hull, represents Japan's last major carrier construction. She commissions November 19, 1944. 10 days later, an American submarine sinks her. She never conducts operational missions. By spring 1944, Japanese naval aviation effectively ceases to exist as an offensive force. The Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1944, nicknamed the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, destroys Japan's remaining carrier air power. American fighters slaughter Japanese attackers. American carriers survive unscathed. The Imperial Japanese Navy loses 3 carriers and over 600 aircraft. American losses: 123 aircraft, mostly to fuel exhaustion, not combat. The disparity isn't merely numerical. It's qualitative. American carriers operate with veteran pilots, ample aircraft reserves, supported by massive logistics networks. Japanese carriers sail with inexperienced pilots. Veterans died at Midway, Coral Sea, Guadalcanal. Replacement pilots receive abbreviated training because Japan lacks fuel for proper instruction. They're sacrificial offerings. The carrier war ends effectively in June 1944, though fighting continues another year. Japan's remaining carriers become bait at Leyte Gulf, sacrificial decoys drawing American attention while battleships attempt a desperate attack on invasion fleets. The strategy fails. American carriers annihilate the Japanese carrier force at Cape Engano, then pursue and destroy much of the battleship fleet. Japan's navy ceases to be a strategic threat. American carrier production continues accelerating even after Japan's defeat becomes inevitable. The industrial machine, once started, cannot be easily stopped. Carriers commissioned in 1945 arrive too late for combat but demonstrate America's capacity. The statistics stagger comprehension. America commissioned 17 Essex-class fleet carriers during the war. 24 additional hulls reached various construction stages. Total escort carrier production exceeded 150 ships. Japan commissioned 4 fleet carriers during the war years 1941 to 1945. 4. Several more reached partial completion but never operated. The ratio speaks for itself. The strategic implications revolutionized naval warfare forever. Carriers don't matter if you cannot build them faster than they're sunk. Industrial capacity becomes the decisive factor in modern warfare, not tactical genius, not warrior spirit, not even technological superiority. The nation that builds more ships, more aircraft, more tanks wins. Everything else is commentary. American strategists understand this lesson. Soviet planners understand this lesson. The Cold War becomes an industrial competition. Which side produces more missiles, more submarines, more nuclear weapons? The template originates in Pacific shipyards, where American workers welding Essex-class carriers prove that wars are won in factories before they're fought on battlefields. Why does this story remain obscure? Because industrial victory lacks glamour. Midway is dramatic. Desperate dive bombers, burning carriers, turning points. Shipyard production figures are boring. Construction timelines, prefabrication techniques, workforce statistics. Yet Midway matters only because American shipyards ensure that carrier losses can be replaced. Without those shipyards, Midway is just tactical brilliance delaying inevitable defeat. The Essex-class carriers define American naval dominance for decades after World War II. Many serve into the 1970s, modernized repeatedly. Oriskany conducts combat operations in Vietnam. Lexington operates as a training carrier until 1991, 50 years after her keel was laid. No warship class in history serves longer or in greater numbers. The carriers also reshape American naval strategy permanently. Pre-war Navy doctrine emphasizes battleships as the decisive weapon. Carriers provide reconnaissance and air cover. World War II inverts this relationship forever. Carriers become the capital ship. Battleships become escorts. This transformation happens because America can build carriers fast enough to overwhelm enemies. If carriers took 5 years to construct, battleships might have retained primacy. Japanese naval theorists analyzing defeat often cite American material superiority as the decisive factor. They're not wrong, but they miss nuance. Material superiority alone doesn't explain the disparity. Germany possesses vast industrial capacity but builds few carriers. Hitler prioritizes U-boats and battleships. Britain operates large shipyards but produces relatively few carriers. America combines industrial capacity with strategic decision-making, identifying carriers as the decisive weapon, designing carriers for rapid construction, then building them relentlessly. The Henry Kaiser approach to shipbuilding influences manufacturing philosophy globally. Prefabrication, modular assembly, workforce expansion through simplified tasks. These principles spread from shipyards to factories to construction sites. The Essex-class carrier is simultaneously a weapon and a case study in industrial engineering. Modern aircraft carriers, whether American supercarriers or Chinese Type 003 vessels, trace their lineage to Essex-class concepts: angled flight decks, armored hangars, sophisticated damage control. But they also inherit Essex-class construction philosophy: build ships that can be built, not ships that cannot be replicated. The story illuminates another truth. Technological advantage is temporary. Industrial capacity is decisive. Japanese carriers in 1941 arguably surpass American designs. Better aircraft handling systems, superior torpedo bombers, veteran crews. None of it matters by 1944 because Japan cannot replace losses. America fields inferior designs in 1941 to 1942 but iterates rapidly, producing improved versions based on combat experience. By 1944, American carriers equal or exceed Japanese designs, and America has 30 where Japan has 4. Walk through any American shipyard in 1943 and you'll encounter Mary Jenkins, 22 years old, welding carrier hull sections in Philadelphia. Before Pearl Harbor, Mary worked as a department store clerk. Now she operates equipment most men have never touched, earning wages that would have been unthinkable 2 years prior. She works 10-hour shifts, 6 days weekly. The work is exhausting, dangerous, burns from welding sparks, falls from scaffolding, crushing injuries from moving plates. Yet Mary and hundreds of thousands like her show up daily because the alternative is unthinkable. Her counterpart in Kure Naval Arsenal is Tanaka Hiroshi, a skilled shipwright with 20 years experience. Hiroshi takes pride in his craft: precise riveting, perfect welds, attention to detail. But pride doesn't compensate for absent materials. Steel allocations shrink monthly. By 1944, Hiroshi spends more time maintaining damaged vessels than building new ones. He watches partially completed carrier hulls rust because there's no steel to continue construction. The frustration gnaws at him. He has skills but lacks resources to use them. Lieutenant James Madison serves aboard USS Enterprise through most of 1942, the desperate year. He watches carriers sink, first Lexington, then Yorktown, then Wasp and Hornet. Each loss means Enterprise carries greater burden. Madison's squadron flies missions knowing that if Enterprise goes down, there's no immediate replacement. The stress is crushing. Then word spreads through the ship: Essex is coming, and behind Essex comes a fleet. Relief is physical. Madison survives the war, returns home, raises a family. He names his son Essex. The name means nothing to neighbors. To Madison, it means survival. Captain Thomas Jeter commands a construction battalion at Newport News Shipbuilding. Jeter's job is impossibly complex: coordinate workers from dozens of trades, maintain schedule despite material shortages, ensure quality while maximizing speed. He sleeps in his office more nights than his own bed. The pressure is relentless. Delays measured in days potentially cost American lives in the Pacific. Jeter pushes workers hard, perhaps too hard. Accident rates climb. But carriers launch on time. After the war, Jeter never builds anything again. The stress breaks him. He opens a small bookstore in Virginia, seeking peace in silence. Japanese Vice Admiral Takejiro Onishi views intelligence reports on American carrier production with despair mixed with disbelief. The numbers must be wrong. No nation builds warships this quickly. He orders additional reconnaissance, hoping to find evidence of fabrication or miscount. The refined reports confirm initial figures. Onishi realizes Japan cannot win a protracted war. This realization leads him to propose kamikaze attacks. If conventional warfare is mathematically hopeless, perhaps unconventional sacrifice can balance the equation. It doesn't. Onishi commits suicide the day after Japan surrenders, unable to reconcile duty with defeat. Workers at Kaiser's Vancouver shipyard celebrate each carrier completion with modest ceremony. Brief speeches, flag raising, then back to work. The next hull is already taking shape. Joseph Chen, a Chinese-American welder, participates in dozens of these ceremonies. Each one feels simultaneously momentous and routine. Momentous because another weapon joins the fight against tyranny. Routine because tomorrow brings the same work. After the war, Chen opens a welding shop in Oakland. He tells his children stories about the war, but they don't understand the scale. 50 carriers? How is that possible? Chen just smiles. It was possible because everyone made it possible. The industrial miracle of American carrier construction wasn't miraculous. It was methodical. It began with strategic clarity. Identify the decisive weapon. It continued with practical engineering, design for manufacturability, not perfection. It culminated with disciplined execution, build, refine, repeat. Japan fought the war she prepared for, carrier battles decided by samurai spirit and tactical excellence. America fought the war her economy enabled, overwhelming force multiplied by industrial capacity. When these philosophies collided, spirit yielded to steel. Not immediately, not without terrible cost, but inevitably. The workers who built Essex-class carriers rarely receive recognition equal to the pilots who flew from them. Yet without those workers, those pilots never launch. Without Mary Jenkins welding hull plates in Philadelphia, Enterprise fights alone until she sinks. Without Henry Kaiser reimagining shipbuilding as assembly line work, American carrier strength remains insufficient for offensive operations. Without thousands of anonymous contributions, a perfectly welded joint, a section delivered on schedule, a quality control check that catches a fatal flaw, victory becomes impossible. This is the forgotten story behind every famous battle. Before Midway, someone built Yorktown. Before the Philippine Sea, someone built Lexington, Bunker Hill, Essex, and a dozen sisters. Before Leyte Gulf, someone built enough carriers that Japan's entire remaining fleet could be deployed as decoys. That's how complete American numerical superiority had become. The Japanese admirals who called American production impossible weren't stupid. They extrapolated from their own capabilities. If Japan needed 4 years per carrier, surely America needed similar time, perhaps slightly less given their larger economy. The notion that America might build carriers in 18 months, or launch one monthly by 1945, seemed propaganda. No nation had ever demonstrated such capacity. But America did. Not because Americans were braver or more determined. The Japanese certainly matched American courage. Not because of superior technology. Japanese carriers in 1941 were excellent ships. America won because she mobilized industrial capacity on a scale no nation had previously achieved, then sustained that mobilization until victory was certain. 65,000 tons of steel. That's what an Essex-class carrier represented. Multiply that by 17 for the carriers completed. Add escort carriers, cruisers, destroyers, submarines, cargo ships, tankers. Add aircraft, tens of thousands. Add tanks, trucks, artillery pieces. Add everything required to project power across an ocean and sustain armies on distant islands. The mathematics become astronomical. And America delivered all of it while simultaneously supplying Britain, Soviet Russia, China, and Free French forces. This remains the essential lesson for understanding not just World War II, but modern warfare itself. Wars are won or lost before first shots are fired, in the factories and shipyards where nations build the tools of war. Tactics matter. Strategy matters. But production capacity decides outcomes. The nation that builds more wins, provided it has time to build. Japan gambled on winning before American production reached full capacity. The gamble failed. By 1943, American shipyards delivered carriers faster than Japanese submarines could sink them. By 1944, America possessed so many carriers she could absorb losses that would cripple other navies. The legacy endures in every shipyard, every assembly line, every place where complex machines are built through coordinated human effort. The essential truth discovered in those wartime shipyards: break complex tasks into simple steps, train workers efficiently, eliminate bottlenecks ruthlessly. These principles transcend shipbuilding. They represent fundamental insights into how industrial civilization functions. Remember the names: Essex, Intrepid, Hornet, Franklin, Bunker Hill, Wasp, Hancock, Lexington, Yorktown. Remember the workers who built them: Mary and Joseph and Thomas and countless others whose names history forgot. Remember that victory depends as much on the factory floor as the battlefield. And remember that what seemed impossible to Japanese admirals was rendered routine by American industrial might, not miraculously, but methodically, one welded joint at a time, until the impossible became inevitable.